All right, a quick explanation of exercise 1, Renshu Dai Ichi, the very last move. So the way most of us learned this years and years ago was horse stance, cross punch, cross punch, cross punch, cross punch. All right, and it always felt weird because you felt like your hips were tugging. If you do it in natural stance, which is the way we teach the introduction part of this now, you are only using your hands at this stage to memorize the drill. And there's a whole bunch of other techniques. If you don't know it, I could post something later. I have the text form of it and a video form of it that is available online. The foundation stance that we used to learn in, Taika said this is very limiting. This is memorization. You're trying to memorize the handwork, and while you're doing that, you might as well work a little bit on your foundation as well. The problem is, people do this for years, decades even, and they never come out of that horse stance. What happens is, what you're doing is, if you do 10,000 reps of exercise 1, from a horse stance, you're training yourself to be immobile. You're not moving your body when you're training yourself to fight. So eventually, we have several versions of it, but the students memorize it from a natural stance, previously horse stance. Now our students memorize it in natural stance, and then we immediately start going offline at 45 degrees. So that allows you to, instead of the old 1-2, 1-2, you come straight up, but your outside block goes off at that angle, and that creates a 1 count instead of a 1-2 count. But again, back to the fundamental thing that I'm trying to cover today, at the end of exercise 1 is a motion that always seemed kind of messed up, because you're going across. This feels tight here, it even feels tight a little bit in the back. Well, once you make yourself mobile, that tightness goes away. So when I punch across, naturally my hip wants to follow. If I turn my body, I am allowing my body to move, and I'm training myself to move in a fight while I cover, punch, or whatever. Now, to follow force efficiency rules, I want my punches perpendicular to my body. So my chest is here, my punch comes out. How are 99% of your buildings? Floor, building, right? Your skyscrapers? Skyscrapers aren't like this. We have the leaning tower of Pisa that they continually have to spend lots of money on to keep it from falling over, right? We're not here. Some people will say you punch in a triangle because it's stronger, but it really isn't stronger because it's not a triangle. It's 2 lines. This is a triangle. If we punched this way, that would be a triangle, but we don't punch that way. So as we come out, we want to be perpendicular. The very last move is 2 lows, 2 highs in exercise 1. Now, to keep it perpendicular, when I go to my left, it's going to be different than I go to my right, because I'm always punching right hand first. What do I mean by that? If I turn my body and go into an hourglass stance and punch low, this is perpendicular. My right punch is perpendicular. Now when I go with a left punch, it's supposed to be across my body. Now that's perpendicular, but I switch from an hourglass to a back stance. Seems kind of weird, but if you look at it more from the straight on, if I was in a horse stance going across, if I go hourglass and punch, perspective-wise from the front of me, that's that motion is across diagonal. But it's not really. It's a 90-degree angle. Now, when I go my opponent's or my mirror's perspective, when I go across my body, it's tight, so I want to be here, but that's not across my perspective. So when I go to a back stance, it's now across my perspective. So hourglass, 90 degree, it's across my perspective. My heel changes, it's 90 degrees, but it's across the perspective. All right? So when I get to the point at the very end of this exercise, I'm going hourglass, back stance, hourglass, back stance. So it's about the perspective. I'm still at a 90-degree angle, but the opponent perspective is off at this angle. So hourglass, right back stance, hourglass, back stance. Now I'm going to punch again with my right at this perspective. So hourglass was first before, but if I go down and go hourglass, my 90-degree angle perspective is not crossed. So on this side, it's back stance, hourglass, back stance, hourglass. Sounds confusing, but think of it from your opponent perspective. Again, visualization is a big thing in Oyata's art. So, again, hourglass, back, hourglass, back, cover, back, hourglass, back, hourglass, cover, hourglass, back, hourglass, back, cover, back, hourglass, back, hourglass. And again, if you don't know the exercise, you do 10 reps of all these different things, right? So be thinking about the perspective when you start turning your angles. Originally, we learned this entire exercise, starting with the left hand and doing a bunch of stuff, a bunch of various techniques, usually in increments of 10. Taika said that the number didn't really matter. If it was, you're trying to bust through things, you only have a minute or two waiting on the subway or something, just do 2 reps. So you start out and you're doing your exercise, then you move to the next move, then the next move, etc. If you're trying to get perfection of all of these moves and your fluidity in place, you typically would do 10, maybe 20 of each move. But remember your perspective. All right? So there's a single. My body, I'm doing this motion, which does not cover my center. But when I turn, that's the first move in exercise 1. If I come straight up, it's fast. 1, 2 count is the old way most people learned it. 1 count is the later way that Taika taught it. So I can do 2 counts, or I can do 1 count with body. 1, 1.